please. Bismillah. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم إلى قيامة يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، يا غريب كربلاء رزقنا الله في الدنيا زيارتكم وشفاعتكم في الدنيا وفي القبر وفي الآخرة. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه وقرآنه المجيد وقوله الحق: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقالوا أإذا كنا عظاما ورفاتا أئنا لمبعوثون خلقا جديدا قل كونوا حجارة أو حديدا أو خلقا مما يكبر في صدوركم فسيقولون من يعيدنا قل الذي فطركم أول مرة فسينغضون إليك رؤوسهم ويقولون متى هو قل عسى أن يكون قريبا يوم يدعوكم فتستجيبون بحمده وتظنون إن لبثتم إلا قليلا. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من يصلي على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before we begin, of course, we have reached our 10th and final night of these majalis and this series. I'd like to take a moment, first and foremost, to thank all of the organizers, to thank the Dallas and Plano community, to thank those who showed up diligently and early to make sure that whatever was needed for these majalis to work and for the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam to be conveyed, whether it was those who made the tabarruk, served the tabarruk, cleaned up after everybody had their tabarruk. I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks, as well as for your warm welcome into the Dallas community. Second, I would like to offer my apologies that if I said anything, A, incorrect, or B, that may have been insensitive, or that may have rubbed someone the wrong way, then I sincerely apologize. That was never the intent. It was always in the spirit of learning, and in the spirit of growth, and in the spirit of making friends based on knowledge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And see if there's anything that I said correct, it comes from Allah. And if there's anything wrong that I said, it's either from my own misinformation, or from my own ignorance, or from shaitan. And so I ask you to overlook and pardon those, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Coming now to the crux of the discussion. Tonight, we will be concluding our 10-night series of looking into Shi'i eschatology, the Ma'ad. We want to know, through the course of these nights, not some other religion or some other methodology's way of explaining the afterlife or explaining what's happening around us or explaining the universe and multiverse, all of these things. We kind of want to make sure that this is something that we have understanding from our own tradition as well. Before I forget, let's also have the brothers and sisters kindly request that if you could please put your phones on silent, and we'll also do the same. That way we don't have too many distractions as we move forward through the night. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's also have a louder, more awake salawat to show that we're all here. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ثانيا لحب الحسين عليه السلام. So tonight, we're going to be looking at something that even our modern physics is somewhat perplexed by. It started to be answered by the realm of quantum physics, and that is the notion of time. We want to see how exactly does time correlate between these three. We have been mentioning here and there throughout the nights this example of that Russian doll where there's something smaller each and every single time you open up the previous one. Here, we're going to be looking at how exactly do the realms of resurrection and barzakh exist with relation to alam al-dunya. Now, we've already mentioned in our analyses into barzakh that barzakh is not something that when you die, it'll happen 10,000 years from now or 50,000 years from now. It is happening here and now. It is happening all around us. And that barzakh is kind of that outer shell where we are the inner doll and something outside of us is also encompassing and happening around us. That is the barzakh, where we have our body in alam al-khayal. Right? Just as a quick recap of what we have covered. But outside even that, bigger than that, encompassing even of our alam al-khayali body is our ruh, our soul. And so here we have to start to understand how exactly time works. We've mentioned hadith, for example, where Rasulullah ﷺ says that you can, for example, or you should, die before you die. If you die before you die, then, for example, you will be able to experience the barzakh before you actually have to die and have to experience the barzakh. You get to versus you have to, right? And the way how we understand this, for those brothers and sisters who are a little bit more inclined towards physics, this is called the vertical model of time. And the way that we want to understand this, as opposed to the linear and cyclical, is going to be unique, and we're going to try to show models for this as well. But first, let's see what the linear model looks like. Let's see what the cyclical model looks like, and let's see what the vertical model looks like. The linear model is probably the most familiar to all of us. This is what our neuroscience tells us that we are experiencing time. That the past is kind of, if we were to imagine it on a line before, then at the current moment there is the present, and then forward down this arrow would be the future. Yet, this is not how all societies view time. Some societies view time as something cyclical. something that happens in a circle. You find that the Hindu traditions, the Buddhist traditions, they see time as something more recurring. And of course, this is where they get, eventually, the concept of samsara, which is reincarnation, birth, death, and rebirth. And they explain it, pretty interestingly, through the use of, for example, days in a week, where after Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and Saturday, what happens after Saturday? That same Sunday that you started off with. And so the weeks kind of have this cyclical nature going to them. Similarly, they will look at, for example, the seasons of time. That after spring comes summer always, after summer you always get fall, after fall you get winter, and after winter you come back to spring. Now I don't know about over here in Dallas where you don't even get all 4 of the seasons, and it's always like, you know, here that it's always like over 100 degrees. May God help you guys. But at least in Michigan, we get too much probably of winter, too little of spring, maybe a good amount of summer, too little of fall, and then immediately we're into like 5-6 months of winter. Right? We have complete imbalance. But at least the concept of seasons is there. Brothers and sisters, if I could ask those of you who are sitting here by the wall, let's move forward, and sisters as well. You guys are already kind of bunched up together, but let's start to make room as more people will be coming. Today is probably going to be the biggest night. Of course, it's the night of the 10th, and therefore we need to make room from now. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, while we don't exactly have anything prima facie against either model, linear or cyclical, both kind of do make sense. Scientists, however, will analyze time a little bit more methodically, where they will measure it in terms of seconds and minutes and hours, etc., right? And then we have days, weeks, months, years, decades, centuries. We kind of in our day-to-day experience, we just experience it as, hey, meet me at 7 o'clock. Okay, 7 o'clock is 2 hours from now. And then sometimes those 2 hours go quickly, sometimes they go very slowly. Time is not always going to correspond with how scientists measure it. And therefore, a newer model, developed in the 1800s, it seems, was proposed where it was called the vertical theory of time, or a vertical model of time. And here, we have the capability within this theory to account for time slowing down, and speeding up based on our experience. This is, of course, then more substantiated as Einstein comes into the picture, and Einstein's theory of relativity of time comes in, where an observer can experience time going much faster or much slower depending on their speed. And the easy way to go and explain this to all of my younger brothers and sisters, especially if you went to the movies recently, probably before Muharram, is if you saw The Flash, or if you know how Superman's powers work, you know that the quicker he goes around the earth, he can stop time, and sometimes even go backwards in time. Yes or no? Yes. Okay, so alhamdulillah, I haven't lost anybody yet. Now, if that's how time works with regards to relativity, what does it have to do with vertical? We haven't lost the linear part of this because there is still progress. Just because Sunday always comes after Saturday, and Monday comes always after Sunday, it doesn't mean that it's not a new Monday. Right? This is, you have progress. We're not always repeating the same week over and over again. Even though sometimes it feels like I'm just in a routine, I wish, my boss would give me something different to do or whatever. But we do have progress. And therefore, with this cyclical model, we're going to incorporate the linear model. What is the model that we end up getting? A spiral. With a spiral, you can go forward and upwards. Is everyone with me? Forwards and upwards. Now, what you end up getting in our religious understanding is, okay, fine, over here on this level, you have dunya. Now, gradually, you are coming up, until finally you are completely a different, person. This, we can also understand with the concept of mada. that you don't necessarily have to go to the next level. You could just have your time ended over here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His explanation through His representative, how does death work? There are many days where we could die, but if, for example, we decide to do something like, for example, pick up the phone, call our mothers, call our fathers, do Salat al-Raham, then our lifespan is extended. Similarly, we might have something that completely takes down the count of years, where it used to be much higher, but because we didn't do something, now it's completely reduced. Many of us have heard of this, Salat al-Raham experience with time and how long we have to live. And we were talking before this about experiencing barzakh willfully versus forcefully. Here, you can go upwards. Remember, in our first night, we talked about how Imam Hussein alayhi salam, on the 10th of Muharram, he said to his companions that death is just a bridge. If we're imagining this spiral, we can imagine it using something like an elevator. Yeah, I don't have to go the long way around to get up here. I can just use an elevator. But back at that time, 1400 years ago, they didn't have these kinds of mechanisms like elevators. What would Imam Hussein alayhi salam say to get from here to there? A bridge. You can go willfully before you die. When we die, however, you have to go to a barzakh. We mentioned that barzakh is that moment of separation between the soul and your body. Brothers and sisters, there's a couple of brothers and sisters who are coming in and they're finding it hard to find space. Let's all move forward so that we can make space. Even those who are on the walls, please come forward. And I see a lot of space over here, a lot of space over here. Please, let's come forward. Unless, of course, you have back issues, then I'll allow for that. But otherwise, most of you, I know you guys play basketball, you guys are healthy, so come over here and don't give me that excuse. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If this is a bridge, and we could also imagine it as an elevator, you can keep on going through in your mi'raj. Remember, Rasulullah has said, Salatul mi'raj al-mu'min. You can ascend all of these layers in your salah. If this is something that we can just traverse willfully as we start to move these veils away, we don't have to go in this long way around. We can experience barzakh right now, and many of our scholars see these barzakhi beings without the need to go and actually die. Yes, all of us will eventually die, and once we die, we will all start to experience that barzakhi realm. Imagine it like a train. You could teleport if you have the ability to teleport, but if not, everybody has to eventually go on this arrow called the train of time, and you will eventually get to death, and you will have to experience barzakh. Similarly, those who have purified their souls, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Truly the one who has succeeded is the one who has purified his soul. If you have purified your soul, you don't have to go through all of life to experience barzakh. Similarly, you don't have to go through all of barzakh to experience, what do we say the outer realm, even outside of barzakh is? The realm of the soul? That is the realm and the world of resurrection, of qiyamah. This is why we have Quranic ayat, which we'll be looking at shortly, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responding to those people who ask, when is the day of judgment? And Rasulullah gives a couple of different answers. We'll analyze these couple of different answers. But before we move on from these models of time, linear, cyclical, and vertical, let's quickly mention what exactly linear does to our attitudes towards life. When you have a linear model of time, this is what Judaism, Christianity espouse, and even many Muslims think that time works this way. They think, okay, well, at the end of the day, let's use Shi'a terms, Imam Mahdi will come back, the day will be saved, and happily ever after. And so it's predetermined, but in a positive way. Come to the cyclical side, where everything is just happening over and over and over again, and you're just where you just keep on coming back. You come back as an ant, or you come back as some kind of like a cow or an anteater, or I don't know. You come back in one of these forms, this can start to become deterministic and you feel like you're doomed. You don't have any say in this matter. Whereas with this model, with the vertical model, where you are choosing and you can ascend, you can descend, your memories are now accessible to you. Remember? We said that time slows down and speeds up. There's a book series, fiction, where this exact model of time was explored. It's called something along the lines of The Quest for Lost Time or something along those lines. I highly recommend it. But basically when he smells something or tastes something, he goes into his memories, time stands still and he's able to experience both the past as well as the present all together in the same moment. When we have a vertical model of time, we start to understand, just like we said, that barzakh is happening right now. Similarly, Qiyamah is also happening when, brothers and sisters, 50,000 years from now? 200,000 years from now? It's happening now. And so now let's look at some ayat of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show us a little bit more of these hints. Of course, as much as people at that time could understand. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Our first ayah that we want to look at tonight is Surah An-Nahl, 16th surah, ayah number 77, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, and the matter of the hour, كَلَمْحِ الْبَصَرِ, it is like the twinkling of an eye, or it's even nearer. Okay, wait a second. If the Quran is saying that if I just blink my eye, khalas, Qiyamah is here. Because the question is, when is Qiyamah? It's like, okay, it's nearer to you than the blinking of an eye. Okay, I think in just the explanation, everybody here in this room has blinked, right? Okay, where's Qiyamah? It's not here yet. What we understand from this is that it can be near if we decide to take that elevator, if we decide to take that bridge. Die before you die. But if we're going to take the train of time, then yes, those people who are going to be here in the future, those people who don't just traverse all of these realities, yeah, they will have to experience when this world shuts down and the trumpet is blown and everybody dies, and then even everybody in barzakh dies. This world is shut down, barzakh is shut down, now you have to go towards Qiyamah. Time's up. You have to go over there. But it's also your choice. You can go whenever you want. Now, if it's closer to you than the blink of an eye, we understand that, yeah, if you have control over removing these veils, then it's as close to you as salah is to you. Salatul Mi'raj al-Mu'min, where the salah will elevate you to the level of barzakh, will elevate you even past barzakh. If that's how it works, let's move on to the next ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, the next surah, ayah number 51, when someone asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when is the hour? Rasulullah gives a very interesting answer. He says, and these were the ayat that I just mentioned at the beginning of my talk, where Rasulullah says, who knows, maybe it is near. Which is very interesting. Many of us have read the Quranic ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, only Allah knows when it's going to happen. Yeah, only Allah knows when it's going to happen, meaning how long He's going to give this world time to get there. How long He's going to give barzakh time to get there. But maybe it's near for some people who are reading this. Maybe it's not near for other people who are reading this. Some people, based on how good or how bad their actions are, each bad deed is an extra veil that you are introducing to your situation. Each good deed is a veil that you are lifting from your situation. You are getting closer and closer and closer to understanding those realities. Similarly, we have explanations that say that each and every single good deed is a gate into paradise, every single bad deed is a gate into hell. Each and every single thing that you do slowly gets you closer to that reality. And once you finally understand that, right now, just like the Imams did, you can go past all of these, go all the way up into Jannah, experience everything, and you can come back down. How many of you have heard, for example, the story of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wasalam, when he is in jail? Let's have Allah salawat for Imam al-Qadhi. Let's also come a little bit closer because we have more and more people coming in. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We're going to have to do much better. Some of you guys barely did, budged an inch. So I appreciate those of you who did move forward, but those who didn't, please do come forward. And sisters, if you guys can also, bunch up together, that way you guys have more room for more sisters to come. Thank you very much. So now, if it's possible for us to go up the levels, we don't have to take the long way around. Yes? How exactly will this work in paradise? In paradise, we can have access to anything. Just like that elevator, it's our choice to relive those memories and relive those good times. And in hellfire, they don't have that choice, but they will have to relive all of time collapsed onto one another, everything happening all at once, all their bad deeds happening, and the effects of those bad deeds happening at once. Right? Remember when we were talking about the books of deeds? Yes, it's rolled out as a scroll, and it'll show us our chronology. But we can pick any one of those deeds to come and experience. And it doesn't have to be in the same order that we lived them. Right? Once we are outside of this dunya, time becomes very wonky and very weird. And once we start to understand how even our quantum physicists of today in the West are starting to describe time, it starts to give us a better idea of how time will work, not only in Barzakh, not only in Akhirah, but also in Jannah and Jahannam, and by choice. Or in Hellfire's case, not by choice. So now we come to Surah Ash-Shura, ayah number 14. This is the 42nd surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if it was not for a single word from your master, but for a word of your master that proceeded from your Lord, for a stated term, everything has already been decided for you. How do we understand this? Meaning, take your time if you want in the dunya, but as you send deeds towards Allah, they're already being judged. Look, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is Sari' al-Hisab. He is very quick in, determining our fate. It's not like, oh, Allah has to go and decide thousands of years from now, I wonder whether we should go and send this deed to... No, they're already being recorded, judged, put into the different categories of Jannah and Jahannam right now. Imam al-Qadhi alayhi salam, before the salawat, we saw that he was in prison, and Harun sends a woman to go and distract her. And we are all, to some level, experienced with this story where this woman who is not properly, in her hijab, she is there in the prison cell with Imam al-Qadhi alayhi salam, and trying to go and, delude him and show the people that once we go and open up this cell, look at what your Imam was doing. Imam al-Qadhi is still in his prayer, he does not get distracted. Yes? And when he isn't in his prayer, she goes and asks him, this whole entire time I've been trying to distract you, why didn't you get distracted? He says, no offense, but what are you compared to the Hurul Ain that I can see in Jannah right now? The Imams can see Jannah in our future, in their now. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam would go, in his own words, every Friday, all the way up to the Arsh of Allah with the other 14 Ma'sumin, get more information from Allah, and he would come back, all while his body is still here, present amongst us. Rasulullah went on his Mi'raj. These things are realities that we have in our literature, in our corpus. Let's go on to our next ayah. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 36 says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌ وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَىٰ حِينٍ. In this earth you will have time to enjoy and just go about your day for a certain time. Meaning up until that final deadline, you can take your time. You don't have to come to Barzakh, but when that time comes, you will have to come to Barzakh. When the trumpet is blown and Barzakh is shut down, you can take your time even in Barzakh. And you can take your time to go and purify your soul and come with whatever you had missing, all those qada prayers, all those whatever you had. Or you can skip Barzakh and go up towards the realm of Qiyamah. You can experience it now. All of these things, whether it's earth or whether it's barzakh, they have an ajal musamma. They have hatta hin. They have a certain specified time that you can choose either to ride the train all the way till the end, or you can start, and I'm going to make another Marvel reference, so please forgive me for those of you who are more DC fans. You can become like Doctor Strange and start to make your own portal and start going through those portals towards other realms. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Final ayah that I want to look at is from Surah Al-A'raf, the 187th ayah, 187. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the hour will not come except all of a sudden it's there. In one of the surahs of Juz' Amma, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. A lot of translations get this wrong, where they'll say, until you finally meet him. Work and work and work and keep on bettering yourself all the way up until you meet him. And it gives us this idea of a conveyor belt where we will all eventually have to meet Allah. فَمُلَاقِي, however, in the Arabic means all of a sudden it's done and you're already standing in front of him. Mulaqi is a noun. It's not that you will meet him, you are already in front of him. You are, not even metaphorically, already standing in front of him, doing hisab. Right now, of course, before your final death in this dunya, you still have the time to go and do tawbah, to go and change your story. Imam Sadiq ﷺ says that we are all stories. Try to be a good story. You can go and the pen is in your hands. The free will is here in your hands. You can change your story anytime you want. But once the book is closed and the ink has run out, then there's no more chances to go and change and save yourself. So right now, while we still have chances, buy a masbaha, right? Something like this, right? Where you can just keep on, even in the middle of a lecture, you can just go and say astaghfirullah, right? Astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh. You can just go and get a couple of hundred of these in while I'm talking my philosophies. Yeah. And go and start to atone for some of your sins. But like I promised, we have to go and see how this works in paradise as well as in hell, because the lecture is titled Vertical Eternity in Paradise and Hell. How does it work? It's not going to be such that we just have a never-ending arrow of linear time. It's not going to be that we're just in a loop, reliving the same exact things over and over again. It's this same spiral where we're always advancing and advancing and advancing, where, for those of you who were here yesterday, when I explained to you how our imagination will be enhanced every single Friday by a new sense, and Allah will add on to the 5 senses that we have and give us more quality of life by new senses by which to go and experience our Jannat. Similarly, you can choose any one of your memories in dunya, in barzakh, or in Jannah. Any of the memories that you're making in Jannah, you can choose to relive them with your new senses, with your new understanding, with your new ma'rifah of Allah, pieces that you've been piecing together. You can do all of these things forever. And as soon as you enter into a memory, you can live it out, you can stop it any place you want, you can splice it, you can edit it, like how you do in a video. You can change how the past happened. You can change memories, you can change what the outcome was. All of these things are in your hands. Probably the best way to go and explain this, alhamdulillah, I'm speaking to the youth today, but before I go into this example, let's all have our brothers and sisters come a little bit closer because we still have more and more people coming in. I see some people even in the second gymnasium. It seems that they were also looking for some room. Please come forward if you see any room. It's okay if you're a little bit squished together, but if more people get to benefit from this, then that'll also be written down in your record of good deeds. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Come a little bit forward. Guys, come over here. Come a little bit forward. The best way that probably I've found that I could describe this is like a video game. Now everybody's attention is here. Interesting. So, in a video game, I'm not talking about FIFA, I'm not talking about NBA 2K, I'm not talking about what have I been making fun of? Fortnite, Call of Duty, right? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the OG games. I'm talking about Super Mario, right? Where you have levels, where you have bosses, where you have a final boss. Yes. When you save your game, can't you go back to any one of those previous levels and play it over again? But now that you have maybe some of those power-ups, you can go through and you can, run through and annihilate those enemies, those lower-powered enemies, with some of your better powers. And maybe you can go and get more and more points so that you can fight the final boss. Right? I'm just, you can tell how long it's been since I played video games, right? So, when you can understand this through video games, that just like memories, you can go through each and every single one of them at your will. And this is how paradise seems to be, where you can go through good memories, you can go through your times here on earth, you can go through your times where you made friends with your ancestors, with other believers in Barzakh, and in Qiyamah, in Jannah. What about those people who are in hell? Those people who are in hell don't have a choice of where they go. They are under the control of their memories. Their memories, their guilt, will keep on replaying in loops. And their hasra, their regret that they could have just done a little bit better, will keep on going, not in that cyclical time, but in a downward spiral. Now, of course, we've been talking about shakila, we've been talking about second natures and all of this kind of stuff, and we mentioned that hell is not permanent for everybody, it is temporary for some. You can always reverse this and start to come back out. But it takes hard work to finally be able to realize that the way that you were viewing the world was wrong. To see that the people who you were hanging out with, your friends, even in dunya, if you can come to this realization and go down, stop going down this spiral that might destroy your life, right? If you have bad friends, the choices become a lot worse. You might go into drugs, you might go into some kind of addiction, you might go into ruining your whole entire life. But if you have good friends, the highway that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He's hadaynahu as-sabila imma shakiran wa imma kafura, you can go and take either one of these two highways. Yes, it's hard to get into both of these, but once you're on there, that this journey becomes very quick. You can go and become better and better and better exponentially, and you can become worse and worse and worse exponentially as well. If Jannah and Jahannam, if Qiyamah is happening here and now, then brothers and sisters, take this into account with your shakila, with your dispositions, with your second nature, and start working on yourself so that you can start to get out of these spirals. Catch it before it's too late, because once it's a habit, it's hard to break a habit. Once it's a second nature, it's still possible, it's just much, much harder. If paradise and hell are abilities for us to form new memories as well as relive good memories, then brothers and sisters, the way how I want to end is not to go and make people feel bad, those who didn't come, but to thank those who did come into these majalis. Those of you who did come, you probably noticed that you benefited either by meeting a new friend, or you maybe will benefit in some unseen kind of way, like for example, you get ajr, or for example, you might, and this is talking very, very much down the line when this youth program becomes much more established, some of you might even find your future spouse and kids maybe even born from these unions. If this dunya, and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, every one of us are stories, therefore be a good story, then I want to share with you something that I heard very recently about a man who was in depression for years. And his daughter came and said to him, brothers and sisters, we have people who are trying to join. Please come a little bit closer and move a little bit further back for our sisters. That way we can, accommodate more and more people. I know we have room. I'm still seeing, a lot more room. Thank you very much. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Another louder salawat in honor of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This man was depressed for years. And his daughter came up to him and said, you know, the solution is that you just take the chemicals that the doctors want you to take, and inshallah those will go and up your dopamine and you'll be happy. He says, eventually I went and started going to my doctor, I went to my clinician, my psychiatrist or whatever, started taking the meds, and it felt so amazing. It helped me so much. Until finally I needed more. I needed to up the dosage. I needed to go into different kinds of medication. Until finally I was on everything in the books, and I was addicted. He said eventually I had to go and get out of this spiral, and God save us. Look, habits are one thing. Chemically induced states of mind, drugs, alcohol, that's much, much harder to quit those addictions. And this is where we need God's help, brothers and sisters, to help us get out of these kinds of states. Nevertheless, this man, non-Muslim, went and said that eventually I needed to go and get myself out of this. And I went to go and see alternative ways of helping because I didn't want to just be dependent on these drugs. Says, what did I go and start doing? Says, I heard about this story where a doctor was summoned to Cambodia, and I know I'm going to butcher the story, so it's not important. The important part is what we learned from the man in Cambodia. This doctor goes to Cambodia, and he hears that there's this man who has severe depression, and the man, he had lost his entire farm, he was burned down, and he had a lot of reasons to be basically despondent and lose all hope in life. We find that this guy is losing all hope. He doesn't even get out of bed. He's like, what's the point? I've lost everything that I worked for my whole entire life. What's the point? He gets to the village in Cambodia and he sees that they've already treated him. How did you guys treat him? They say, well, don't you guys always talk about something like antidepressants? We gave him an antidepressant. He says, oh, which antidepressant worked? I'd love to know what had this quick turnaround. Said, we went, we listened to him, and we saw that he had a real point. He had a valid point. He had reasons to be depressed. And we empathized with him, and we saw that maybe we could do something to help. And so we all came together as a village and we brainstormed, and we said, we need to get him out of this stimulus, we need to get him out of this environment, and we need to just go and buy him a cow so he can have a new business. They go and buy him the cow, come back a few weeks later, this guy's not crying anymore, this guy doesn't have the problems that he was having, he's starting to get better and better at, whatever business he was doing with the cow, whether it was milk or, plowing the fields or whatever it is, he's getting happier and slowly he's out of this spiral of depression. The point is that they were there for him, they were listening to him, they validated his experiences, and they were there for him. I said that I was thanking you guys for coming into these majalis. Not for me, not because I like big crowds, but because I've heard a lot of things that have happened in this community in the months leading up to my arrival over here, where there were some unfortunate deaths, where there were some unfortunate overdoses, maybe some unfortunate, spirals into drugs. And every person who I talk to keeps on telling me that it was something along the lines of the culture was too harsh, the religious family, etc., etc. And we're not pointing fingers, we're not putting any blame, but it was just too much for them to bear. Come to another story which the same person who's presenting says, they came back, this doctor, and he went and implemented it over here, that alongside medicines, we're not discounting medicines and their ability to work. We're just saying, maybe alongside that, offer something like this, where the person who was depressed was told, come back over here, we're forming a little group of people who are also going through things, come over here and start to go and connect with them and form a community with them. Slowly but surely, these people started to care about each other. They became a community, they became a tight-knit brotherhood or sisterhood, and they started to care about each other's day-to-day dealings. Until finally they were friends and even closer than friends. They started to create good memories with each other. In light of that, they were also replacing their bad memories that were contributing to their depression. Slowly, they started to not even need the medication so much. They had a support group. They had friends. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Leadership, if you could also go and pull up the volume a little bit, because it's starting to get a And also, let's have our brothers and sisters also move closer. We have people who are trying to come in. Let's make room. There's some room here and there. Please, let's move forward. That way we can start to make room for those people who are coming in. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's have a second louder salawat in honor of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. These people started to go and create better memories to replace those bad memories that were keep on drawing them into that cesspool, into that spiral of depression. You similarly have that option to go and make friends and make good memories. And I understand that this is probably the first year that there's this Muharram program, and this is still a new organization, but slowly, but yet surely, you will start to recognize faces, you will start to go and make memories with each other, and eventually, if you are there to be there as a support group for each other, God forbid one of you falls into some hard times. Know that you are not alone. You have a support system. You have brothers and sisters in Shi'ism who have the same belief system as you, who have the same moral values as you. You don't have to go to some of these psychiatrists and psychologists who are giving anti-Islamic prescriptions of what to do and what not to do. You can go towards people who are of your own and cut from the same cloth as you. You can depend on them. And you can start to depend on them and rely on them to help you elevate and get out of these sad situations before they are not caught, and you start to take this on alone, and you start to feel isolated. People sometimes go and say to those who are depressed that you just be you. Maybe it's time to go and update that piece of advice to let us be us. Let's all of us deal with it together. Those who you do find they are trustworthy people to go and tell, realize when someone comes to you with your problems and treat it as real, treat it as valid. Become a friend. You don't need to always be someone who's providing solutions. Sometimes that person just needs someone to vent to. And we all, of course, have our problems of varying different, circumstances and, realities. But treat all of them real and just listen and provide that support. Once you provide that support and you are there and that correct structure and that system is there, obviously have those external resources ready just in case something drastic happens, right? But be there as a first level of support. If you people are not there for each other and everybody is just going through life alone, what do you expect to happen here in dunya? Forget about barzakh and the memories. Forget about paradise and the memories. Forget about all of this philosophical conversation about vertical time and being able to choose whichever memory you want and relive it and splice and edit and all this kind of stuff. All of that is irrelevant. If over here you weren't here for your fellow brother and sister. Yesterday we mentioned the hadith of Imam Salih alayhi salam. Sallu alayhi wa ala aswatikum. Where he says that there is a column in Jannah on top of which there are 70,000 palaces. Inside those 70,000 palaces are 70,000 rooms each. Each of these 70,000 rooms are there for you to be there with a friend who you were kind to for the sake of God, or you were just a friend with for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These meeting rooms, these pavilions, are there for those people who made the deepest kinds of connections with their fellow human being, fi sabilillah. If you want to come over here for Abu Abdullah for the sake of Allah, make friends also for the sake of Allah. Might as well go and get some of those rooms in paradise dedicated to you and your friendships as well. Why miss out? But it's not even just about missing out, brothers and sisters. If you can help a brother or a sister who might be going through some hard times, You've saved them, and now I'm going to go all the way back to our first night, where we were discussing the realm of potentialities and actualities. This realm of potentialities where your salah could be accepted or not accepted. Where your mustahab act, they could have brought you towards a full accepted salah or a 60% or a 20% salah. You've saved that brother or sister from sealing their actualities here where they weren't ready to go. And then once they're in barzakh, they have just regrets upon regrets. Brothers and sisters, especially from leadership, if you could go and even turn the volume even a little bit higher, because it's starting to get hard for me to even hear my own thoughts. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I know probably in the recordings, and maybe even for you, like it's not that much, but from here on the minbar, it's a little bit distracting. Let's have another louder salawat in honor of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In barzakh and in paradise and in Jahannam, these deeds that you were adding on top of each other, veils on top of veils, right? It could have been nurun ala nur or khabith on top of khabith, filth on top of filth, or light upon light. I'll give you an example. If you want to go through the entirety of dunya, you want to go through the entirety of barzakh, go through the entirety of resurrection, you can. It's the similarity of this. If you're not mature, then when you are angry, you go through all these different 1,000 types of sins in your anger. Once you finally calm down from your anger, then you start to realize, hey, what was the reason that I was angry? You don't have to. You could immediately just stop yourself in that moment of anger, right? Imam Ali himself says, a moment of pausing, in a moment of anger saves you from 1,000 moments of regret. A moment of pausing and stopping in a moment of anger saves you from 1,000 moments of regret. Similarly, if you just want to go through this whole tantrum of being angry, and then you'll start to go and recognize what were the causes behind my anger, you could do that. Or you could be a little bit wiser and just come to the conclusion right now. Similarly, those people who want to go through all the sins and then go and cleanse themselves through all the sins, okay, barzakh is there. That cleansing process, all those exercises, they're there for you. But those veils of anger, those veils of where you're burning up in anger, but finally the fires of anger subside and then you can start to realize what's happening. Similarly, those fires will be there in Jahannam as well. Once those finally calm down and you start to realize, you can start to come out once you start to work on yourself. And we mentioned Dua Kumail as well, where you start to forget about the multiplicity and just focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, brothers and sisters, it becomes very, very sad where I am here in a venue like this, giving you all advice. Don't be in your own secluded veils of loneliness. Lift those veils and start to see that there are support groups, friend groups around you. Yet on the 10th of Muharram, Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself was left alone, was left lonely, and in a strange land called Karbala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, long after all of the companions had passed away, long after all of the family members of Ahlul Bayt had passed away, long after Abu Fawz Abbas has passed away, he stands alone on the plains of Karbala and he starts crying out, Al min nasiri ansuruna, Hal min mu'inin yu'inuna, هل من مغيث يغيثنا? Is there anyone amongst all of humankind who can come and help me at this point? I gave you all the advice of go be friends to each other. Is there no friend left for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in his final hour? Of course, in barzakh, all of his family comes to come and visit him. But in this dunya, there's no one left for this grandson of Rasulullah. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam comes towards the tents of the women and the children, and he instructs Lady Zainab, Gather all of my women and all of my children in these final moments so that I can go and bid them farewell. One by one, he starts to bid the farewell. He says his farewells to Sukaina. He says his farewells to Zainab. He says his farewells to Rabab. He says his farewells to Imam Zayn al-Abidin and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. At the same time, he goes and carries all of these people towards Imam Zayn al-Abidin. He goes and gathers all of them towards Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and he says, pledge your allegiance towards the next Imam. All of them go and pledge their allegiance to Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Then he goes back outside and he feels a small tugging on his cloak. And he hears a small, delicate voice saying, Baba, Baba. He turns around and he sees that it's this young girl, Ruqayya. He says, what is it, my young Ruqayya? She says, Baba, please, just one more time, go and say your final farewell to me. And if I could request one more thing, just like when Muslim ibn Aqil, when he died and you went and petted your hand over Hamida, and she knew that this was the signal that she became an orphan, place your hand on my hand. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam asked, why, my daughter Ruqayya? Why do you want me to place my hand on your head? She says, because in an hour from now, I will become an orphan. I will no longer have my father. This is my final time that I will see you. Please don't deprive me of what you gave the other children. Imam al-Hussein hugs her and kisses her and places his hand, just like Rasulullah taught them to, on the heads of the orphans. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam now goes and asks for the worst of the worst pajamas to go and be worn underneath his armor. They ask him, why, Imam? Why do you want the worst and the most torn of clothes? He says, because after this, they will go and kill me and they will rob me of my armor. I want to have some haya for my body so that I am not left without any clothing on the plains of Karbala. Yani, they don't have even the decency. If he had nice clothes, they would have stolen that as well from him. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam now starts to go and put the armor. As he does, he goes and cries out, هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرُنَا هَلْ مِن مُعِينٍ يُعِينُنَا هَلْ مِن مُغِيثٍ يُغِيثُنَا. He makes his famous calls that echo throughout all of time. I say, Abu Abdullah, here in this majlis, all of your Shi'a are here to go and respond to you and to say, Labbayka ya Hussein. All together, let's all respond to Imam Hussein. Labbayka ya Hussein. Again, Labbayka ya Hussein. Labbayka ya Hussein. Again, even louder, Labbayka ya Hussein. Labbayka ya Hussein. Imam al-Hussein now hears one fragile voice from the tents of his people calling out, Baba, I am coming. Who is coming? Imam Zayn al-Abidin, with one hand having a sword, another hand having the cane. He says, no, my son, Imam needs to come. He says, no, my son Sajjad, you need to stay behind. Is this what Imam Hussein is reduced to? He only has Imam Sajjad. No one else in humanity can help him. No one from all of these people who claim to be Muslim can come over to him and help him in these final moments. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam comes out and says, I am here, let me defend you, my Imam, my father. He says, no, son, no. Imam needs to continue through you. Go back towards the tent. He goes and tells Zainab, escort him back towards the tent and make sure that he does not come out again. Bar him from the sword, bar him from the battlefield, bar him from coming out. Imam Hussein alayhi salam now goes out towards the battlefield of Karbala. He goes out and he fights valiantly. He kills so many people and he starts receiving arrows in his body. They reverted to the tactics of before in the war, where there's too many people on their side and too few people on this side. They shower him with arrows. Some of them come and they hit him. Imam Hussein starts taking out these arrows. He fights valiantly. He kills many hundreds of people amongst the lines of Umar ibn Sa'ad. Eventually he comes and he says, I am thirsty. If any one of you offers me water, even though you are from my enemies, I will make shafa'ah for you on the day of judgment. None of these enemies of Allah have the heart to go and give Imam Hussein even a small glass of water. Imam Hussein at this point comes back towards the tent and he starts saying his final farewells. He says, after this there will be no reuniting and meeting between you and I until we meet at the pool of Kawthar. Imam Hussein alayhi salam now bids his farewell and he goes back out towards the battlefield of Karbala. Now is the time, brothers and sisters, these are the final moments of your Imam. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam fights until finally he is overcome with arrows and they start hitting him with rocks and they start shooting him with arrows and they start surrounding him from each and every single way, and then he falls off of his horse. Now he is lying on the plains of Karbala. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam says that, do you know what the difference is between killing and slaughtering? He says, do you know what the difference is between killing and slaughtering? He says, when you kill a sheep, it's given water, whereas my grandfather Imam Hussein was not given water. When it is about to die, it is going to be given a swift death, whereas my grandfather Imam Hussein was kept waiting and waiting and waiting, not knowing when is his death going to come. None of them would come and have the courage to finally finish off Imam Hussein. Umar ibn Sa'ad la'natullahi alayh comes and says, one of you go and finish him off. Shimr ibn al-Jawshan keeps on saying, one of you come and finish him off. Khuli comes and he tries to go and kill Imam al-Hussein, but he says that the blessed head of Imam Hussein keeps on reciting the verses of Surah Al-Kahf. And he cannot go and bring himself to kill this beautiful face. Until finally someone else tries to come. He does not have the heart to go and kill Imam al-Hussein, but he goes and at least starts kicking Imam Hussein's head. That you think that you are the representative of Rasulullah. He goes and disrespects and kicks the head of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, until finally, brothers and sisters, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan la'natullahi alayh says, if none of you will go towards the body, I will do it myself. He goes and flips Imam al-Hussein so that more of the arrows are driven into his body. He goes, and before he comes, someone else comes and says, no, Shimr, I will do it. What does he do? He goes and takes a little dagger. This is written in some of our maqtas, brothers and sisters. Then he comes towards the chest of Imam al-Hussein and he starts stabbing the chest of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Until finally Shimr comes and he flips Imam al-Hussein on his back. And he sits on his back and he pulls Imam al-Hussein's hair and his throat is being exposed from the other side. And Shimr ibn al-Jawshan goes and takes his own unsharpened dagger, this blunt dagger, and 12 times he starts hitting the blessed neck of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, until finally he severs the head of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimin, wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun, wal 'aqibatu lil-muttaqin. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم يا شيعة أبا عبد الله الحسين. قتل الحسين عطشانا غريبا عريانا على شط فرات. Imam al-Hussein was killed alone, thirsty, without the clothing of his armor on him, and not a person to go and help him in his final moments. My condolences to all of you, O believers, on the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Brothers and sisters, raise your hands with these tears that you have shed. These are the nights of Imam al-Hussein. This is the night of Imam al-Hussein. On a night like this, brothers and sisters, the believers asked the enemy for one final night. They spent it in ibadah. It is highly recommended tonight. Be awake all night if you can and spend it in ibadah like those 72, like Imam al-Hussein. And may Allah reward us and raise us all with Hussein and the ashab of Hussein. Let us all recite the blessed ayah of the Quran 5 times for all of our hawa'ij, for our marda, for all of the hawa'ij that we have of dunya and akhirah, as well as for the ta'jeel of the faraj of Mawlana Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. 5 times, brothers and sisters. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amma louder, louder. Tonight is the night of Imam Hussein. لقضاء الحوائج. لشفاء المرضى. يجيب لتعجيل الفرج. يجيب اللهم إنا ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأكرم 10 times. يا الله 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 يا إلهي بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها اكشف عنا السوء يا الله. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا كفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار مع محمد وآله الأطهار. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم كن لوليك حجة ابن الحسن louder, louder. وفي كل everybody loudly. وقائدا وناصرا برحمتك يا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.